like Suki's Kimono. I really like this story because it teaches us a pretty important lesson. And we'll talk about that and we'll go through the story together page by page in just a little bit. I just wanted to say hi and give you a little background on Suki's Kimono. Suki's Kimono is a realistic fiction story, which means that the characters and the events are made up, but it's realistic in that a story like this could really happen. So I hope you liked it. And I'm going to switch over and show you Suki's Kimono on my screen. You can use your textbook, you can use Pearson Online, or you can use the YouTube link to follow along with me. So I'll show you the pages and we'll talk about it together. We'll go through some questions. If you have somebody with you, you can ask them the questions. You can ask each other questions. You can find some of our critical thinking questions on our Google slide that I posted to Google Classroom. So you can have that up as well and just go through the questions on your own if you'd like. And if you're following along with me when you're talking about the questions, it might be a little weird at first, but you can pause my video and think about those and come up with an answer in your mind, and then you can unpause it again and we'll talk about it together. All right, this should be fun. Okay, here we are. Here's Suki's Kimono. This is a realistic fiction story, and that just means that the character and the events are made up, but the actual events in the story could happen. There aren't any talking animals or fantasies or anything like that, so that tells us this is realistic. It could actually happen. Okay, so here's Suki in her kimono. She has a big smile on her face. And the question of the week is, how does culture influence the clothes we wear? Okay, so let's dive into Suki's Kimono. Okay, if you will turn with me to page 200, either in your textbook, on your online textbook in Pearson, or through the YouTube video that I linked in the Google slide document. Okay, so page 200 talks about the first day of school, and Suki wanted to wear her kimono. Can you put yourself in her shoes? On the first day of school, we all like to wear our newest outfit, our favorite outfit. We wear our new shoes, we have our new backpack. And Suki didn't care about the new things. She wanted to wear her kimono that she got with her obachan at the festival. And her sisters kind of gave her a hard time about it. So what is your opinion of Suki? Okay, that's our first question that we were going to talk about. And I have it highlighted here. Suki didn't care for the new. She didn't care for the cool. She wanted to wear her favorite thing, and her favorite thing was her kimono. Okay, so what does that tell you about Suki? Okay, you can take a second and pause the video and think about it. You can talk about it with a partner, a family member, and then once you have your answer, you can unpause and we'll come back together. Okay, so now that hopefully you've had a second to think about that question, Suki didn't care. She didn't care if she looked like everyone else. What she cared about was remembering being at the festival with her grandmother and eating the noodles and having the shaved ice and dancing under strings of paper lanterns. Her sisters, on the other hand, let's take a look at their outfits. They have their new shoes, their new outfits, here's their new backpack. They wanted to fit in. They wanted to look like everyone else and show off their new outfits. But Suki didn't care. She didn't care that she didn't have a new outfit. She didn't care for what was cool. What she wanted, which was important to her, was her kimono because it transformed her back into that time that she spent with her grandmother. Okay, so let's turn to page 202. On the way to school, Mari and Yumi were walking ahead of Suki. Why do you think that is? The text says they pretended they didn't know her. Okay, so you can pause the video now. You can think about your answer. You can talk about it with your family, and then unpause and we'll talk about it together. So I think that Suki's sisters were a little embarrassed by her. because she was kind of carefree. She didn't care what people thought. She just wanted to wear her kimono. She didn't mind that her sisters were walking ahead of her. She didn't care about that. I want to draw your attention to this part. Suki turned and waved to her mother before she clip-clopped along in her shiny red gaita. What do you think that means? Okay, here are her shoes here. Those are unlike any flip-flops we wear here in the United States. Why do you think the author wrote that she clip-clopped along in her shiny red gaitas? These shoes are made of wood. So if you can imagine maybe walking in your soccer cleats or your baseball cleats, how they kind of make that noise when you walk, that would be a similar noise that Suki's shoes make when she's walking along the road. And that's just another detail that the author puts in there to help us visualize Suki and the sounds and things that are going on. It makes the story more real to us. You'll see Suki's sisters here walking a few paces ahead of her. Look at their faces. They don't look too happy. They look kind of like they're acting better than her or a little embarrassed by her. All right, we'll turn to page 204. So here's Suki walking to school. It looks like she's having a great time. She's so excited. And she lifted her arms like a butterfly, and you'll see the big sleeves of this kimono here. And the author writes that it made her feel like she'd grown her own set of wings. Maybe she could feel the breeze blowing and the arms of her kimono flapping in the breeze. So on her way to school, Suki looked around and she noticed some kids looking at her and giggling and pointing to her kimono, but she just ignored them. She didn't care for the new again. She didn't care for what was popular. What she cared about was her kimono and thinking about the time she spent with her grandmother. Okay, so let's turn the page. Okay. This page is pretty important because it shows that Suki does have real feelings. She's not just always carefree. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. Suki got to class and there were two boys sitting in front of her and they turned and snickered behind their hands. They were making fun of Suki's outfit, and one boy touched Suki's sleeve and said, "Look, she's a bat." The next line says Suki felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't respond. What do you think that means? She felt her cheeks burn. I think that it shows that they kind of got under her skin a little bit. They kind of hurt her feelings and made her a little mad. Have you ever been upset and you feel your face turning red? That's kind of how I imagine Suki feeling, but it says she didn't respond. Instead, she concentrated on sitting up tall the way her Oba-san always did. And that was easy to do with this tight, snug kimono around her. So, what conclusion can you draw about Suki? You can pause and think about that for a second, and then we'll come back together and talk about it some more. I think that means that, yes, it hurt her feelings a little bit, that people made fun of her, but overall she didn't care. She wanted to be her. She didn't want to act like somebody else or like her friends at school told her she should or her sisters told her she should. She didn't want to wear the new or the most popular. She wanted to just be herself. And I think that's a pretty important lesson for us. And we'll talk about that lesson a little bit more as we go. Okay, so turn to page 208. And Suki is in the classroom. And people were laughing at her. But she took a deep breath. She remembered what was important. And she started dancing. And she didn't hear the people making fun of her. She hummed the music and she remembered hearing at the festival. Now I want you to stop and think about this for a second. The setting has changed a little bit. Yes, she's still in the classroom, but Suki is somewhere else. She has a memory of being at the festival, and she's remembering how it felt to dance barefoot in the open air on the fresh cut grass that tickled her toes. So why is this change of setting important? Okay, she's not actually going to that place, but she's going in her mind. Why is this change of setting important in the story? You can pause the video and think about it for a second, and then we'll come back together and talk about it. Okay, I think this change of setting is important because Suki is reminding herself who she really is. It doesn't matter that people in class are laughing at her or that she doesn't quite fit in. She's using her memories and remembering how she felt when she was at that festival with her grandmother. And she was picturing the dancers and how they moved and to the rhythm of the music, so she could hear the music in her mind. And then she copied those dance movements. So she's kind of going back to a place where she felt happy. And why her kimono was important, why her grandmother was important. And then something changes here. What changes? After she finished doing her little dance and going back in her mind to that festival, everyone in the class was watching her. She kind of felt like she was in trouble because it was quiet. So let's turn to the next page. Her teacher then said, "That's wonderful," and started to clap. Okay, so that's a change. I think Suki would then feel relieved that she wasn't in trouble, but they were actually celebrating her. So after the teacher started to clap, so did her friend Penny that she met on the swings, and then the entire class clapped. Look at Suki, she's the center of attention. This is a big change from when she was walking to school with her sisters and they were pretending they didn't know her. And when she got to class and the boys were making fun of her. Now look at everyone's faces. They're happy. They think Suki is pretty special. They don't think she's weird anymore and she's not wearing what's new and what's trendy. She's being herself and people are celebrating that. So on the way home, Suki's sisters are still walking ahead of her and they're grumbling about their first day. "Nobody even noticed my new sweater," said Mari. "No one even noticed my cool shoes," said Yumi. But Suki smiled. What would have happened if Suki wouldn't have wore her kimono to school? Okay, you can pause for a second and think about it. I think that if Suki hadn't worn her kimono, none of this would have happened. Maybe she would have walked home like her sisters. "Nobody noticed me today. Nobody paid attention to me today." But not Suki. Suki smiled because she was true to herself. She didn't care that she looked different. She didn't care that she didn't have the newest outfit like her sisters. She wanted to be herself. And she was rewarded because she had a good day. So the author put that back in, this part about clip-clopping along behind her sisters. And then she pulled out her pale pink handkerchief from her obi and held it over her head to catch the wind. So the author is bringing back that clip-clop sound that from the beginning that her shoes were making to add a few more details to make the story real and come to life and give us some more some depth to try to transform us into the story. So let's think about, what lesson does this story teach us? What do we learn from Suki's kimono? I'm going to go back to page 200 so I have that title page again. Okay, what do we learn? I think the important lesson that we learn here is just to be yourself. Okay, Suki was herself, even though she didn't look like everyone else or act like everyone else. And in the end, she was happy. When you're true to yourself and you just be who you are and not who your friends say you should be, then that's what makes us truly happy.